Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Durand, the Director of Strategy and Operations at the Prevention Collaborative, and I'd like to welcome you to our next installment of our conversation series. Today, we'll be talking about feminist leadership with Amany Alhadka, who's the Director of Finance and Operations at the Prospera International Network of Women's Funds. Welcome, Amany. Can you start off by just tell us a little bit about what you do at the Prospera International Network of Women's Funds?
Hi, Kathy, and thanks for having me today. I'm really excited about our topic today. So Prospera is a network of 44 autonomous women and feminist funds who are giving grants in 177 countries, mobilizing over 200 million USD annually. And our mission is really to strengthen the political and financial capacity of women's and feminist funds, to empower women and girls, and to redistribute resources to transform their lives and communities. I would like to describe my role in relation to the topic that we have today is trying to find innovative solutions to the traditional problems and trying to ensure that there are flexibility and just what do we mean to run a feminist organization where you have to deal with things like liability, risks, accountability, controls, finance, right? Fiduciary responsibilities, things that not so feminist in a way.
It's like this issue of, feminist leadership, which we all talk about so much, but like what does it look like in practice? And particularly from an operations excellence type of lens.
For me, feminist leadership means leveraging the individual power for the power of the collective, while at the same time we respect and acknowledge that we play different roles and hold different positions, right? That could change based on the context. So it's not that, we have all of us to jump and do the same thing, or, this is not my role. It's more of like, how do I use my own power and within the context I am in for the entire group, right? And how do I practice and demonstrate leadership? And for the organization, how do we create spaces for everyone to practice their leadership power? Because everyone has leadership style, everyone has a power. And the more we create in terms of spaces and changing dynamics and put people in certain positions, everyone can practice this leadership and everyone could practice decision-making processes at the same time, right?
Yeah.
How about you? Tell me. I'm interested also to learn from you.
I mean, it's interesting. Like, I think there's so many different takes, I think, on feminist leadership. And I think part of it really has to be embracing all these different approaches to it and really listening and learning from each other. And appreciating like what we're all bringing to the space. I think you're right. Yeah, how do we within our organizations create like networks of leaders and groups of leaders? Because we all have that in it. And so how do we lead in our different ways, in our different spheres of work, but keep bringing that sort of feminist approach back to it, that openness, the intersectionality, like the diversity, like just bringing in all of the different views, really listening and talking with each other in a way that creates that kind of safe space. I worked in mainstream development organizations for 20 years. And when I came to the collaborative, it was like taking like a deep breath and feeling like, I'm home. It's been so fun just creating that space. And the collaborative was new when I joined it. It was a startup. And so being able to build a team and work with them to create this space where we just respect each other's time and self and collective care is a big part of it.
I always describe it as a journey. Like what kind of a journey that we could create for everybody so that we can all learn and unlearn. Because everyone is coming from different perspective, different background, different experiences, right?
Yeah, and learn as you go. And I actually love this. I'm going to totally be thinking about this for days, this concept of unlearning. Because I talk a lot about learning in the collaborative. And maybe, this whole idea of how do we unlearn that stuff that that we're bringing into the work that we're doing.
So we often talk about, like diversity, equity, inclusion. Everyone is coming from different background, different country, different culture. How do you create the environment for all of this to blend together and leverage that power of the diversity and the beauty of the diversity, right?
Our journey at the collaborative, and I love the word journey, we use that a lot too, is a little bit different in the sense that we're young and we started off knowing we were trying to create a different kind of organization, and so we started with that. I think what's really interesting is we were so allergic almost to like bureaucracy. People were just join the collaborative together. Like
Yes.
we were creating the collaborative so that we could not be in that. And so I think we focused a lot on the culture thing, and I actually find now we've kind of gone from that, we call it the kitchen table stage of growth, where you're 5 or 6 people, everyone can be involved, and now we're up to like 15 people on our core team, and that those systems and things like are more like in demand, I would say now, just because it's too hard to, like, even when we did our travel policy, it was like, okay, we have to do this because I can't just keep responding to every individual thing. And so we've been introducing the policies as we go, which means we've tried to have like more collaborative things on them. We just didn't sit down and write a travel policy and say, here it goes. Like, we talked to people about it, and I'm not saying everybody was 100% happy with it, but we did at least consider, had conversations about it and considered different views.
So some of the, and yes, HR practices and HR policies is one of the critical elements where you see a lot of feminist principles applied. So, and I'll give you 2 examples. One around performance review, for example. So how would you do it? So historically, performance reviews have always been the manager or the supervisor sitting, giving feedback to the employee about what did you do over a year, like your achievements, areas of improvements, all of that, right? Then eventually people move to, as the supervisor is giving feedback to the employee, we also need to create a space for employees to give feedback to the supervisor and to the organization at the same time. Well, great. Then down the road, we need the 360 feedback so that others can also contribute to the staff performance review. But now and for so many years that has been always the model. But now if you want to think about like, okay, how do you make that performance review even more feminist? You start thinking about, okay, like what are the opportunities that you create for the employee to not just perform the task that they need to deliver, or like the work that they need to deliver, but also like stuff that they can do that satisfy their interest. How would you support them to expand and grow in a way that, yes, it will help the organization, but at the same time have some satisfactions.
2 things I think really important is like the continuous feedback, right? Don't wait until, your annual performance review. Try to give feedback as you go. And I think how you do that, where you do that, when you do that, but it should be fairly close after, at the occurrence of whatever incident, positive or negative, that you want to give the feedback to. And I think also, like, having conversations about it. And I agree with you, like, organizations are built from people. They're just people, right? Yes. They're not like an entity, although sometimes we talk about them as they exist on their own, but they don't. So you want your people to grow. How do you give them those opportunities? And how do you continue to have those conversations about where do people want to go? I think it's maybe aptitude that I want to say, where it's like the place where your passion and your competencies intersect.
Communication is also another thing, like, how you create communication channels and ways and forms for people to voice their concerns, put their ideas on the table. Self-care and collective care and well-being. This is also like now it's in the center of what we do because we want to care for our people. Yeah. And the way you do it is like how you ensure that you have the practices and the policies and the culture that people need to rest.
Yeah, and the practice, I think, is also helping people. I think this is very much a part of my feminist leadership, is like trying to figure out how to help people learn, as we were talking earlier, about how to do that. Learn how to rest. Learn that it's okay to take those breaks. Learn how to give feedback.
Yes.
Learn how to accept feedback.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Because these things are hard to do, and learn how to resolve conflict. I think being a feminist organization is there's this constant like, let's evolve, let's iterate, but there's like the conversation and really the trust needs to be there.
So the trust, generosity, the support, the feedback, the communications, the openness, all of these, just put them in practice. I would say first and foremost, check your basics. Are your basics covered when it comes to practices, policies, the right people in the right place, all of that? Then understand your organization culture. Whether you're ready for a culture perspective, from a cultural perspective, whether you're ready to move forward with this approach. So, for example, if there is a culture of lack of transparency or a shame and name or, like lack of accountability, these need to be fixed first before you start making some of the more progressive changes. And the last thing is Start small, take baby steps, pilot something. We have piloted a lot of HR policies just as a pilot, and we learn from it before we make it a final or, like a policy that we stay with.
The last thing I want to say is, you said this earlier, it's a journey. And so you really have to embrace the hills and the valleys. It's not going to be all peak moments. There's going to be moments, but we're constantly moving forward. And we just have to keep talking and listening and being curious. Celebrate the wins. Exactly.
Yes. Don't take anything for granted. You said something amazing around this kitchen table and, having conversations. That's not in a lot of other organizations. So appreciate what you have done so far and celebrate these wins and look at how we take them to the next level.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been really fun, and I look forward to continuing this conversation.
Yeah, we're all in this journey together, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, no, this is great.
Thanks you so much. Thank you.
Bye.